Stepping up to the couch, it's Brian, who led the league last season in cracked screens. But with his new athletic case, it looks like that won't be the case. Touchdown, Brian!
It's off to Leonard, defended by Simmons. Is this the dagger?
All I have to say is, holy shit. Alright, that's the end of this video. People should like and subscribe for more content like this, and that's the end of the video. Okay, seriously, holy shit, right? That was one of the best game winners that I have ever seen in my life. And it was the only Game 7 buzzer beater in NBA history. So the Sixers quite literally lost in historic fashion. Now, what needs to be discussed is how high that we rank Kawhi Leonard. However, that is not the topic of this video, and I don't know that it ever will be, but I felt like it needed mentioning. So the Philadelphia 76ers lost in historic fashion. I'm not gonna give them any shit for having lost. As funny as the Joel Embiid crying photo is, it actually makes me like him more. Embiid messes around so much that it's hard to tell how much he cares. The man was bawling like I was watching the end of Avengers Endgame. So I gained a lot of respect for Embiid, who is a player that I've always been up and down with, for crying like that. Also, this tweet by Rudy Gobert is great and deserves some attention. So here it is. So I gain a lot of respect for Embiid for his emotional attachment to the game. What I don't have a lot of respect for was how he performed in this series. And yes, I do understand that he was hurt. We will get into that. Another guy that grossly underperformed was Benjamin David Simmons. While this team's roster has changed a lot, the core of this team is and will always be the duo of Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. Both of them really struggled in this series. So I want to talk about these two players and determine whether or not the two are good enough as a duo or could be good enough as a duo to eventually win an NBA championship.
Rebound. Save. Absolutely incredibly with the acrobatic alley-oop.
I actually first want to talk about the other guys on this roster, because they can impact how successful Ben and Embiid can be. Looking at the starters, as we all know, we have a very talented group here, but that doesn't necessarily equal success. Look at the Boston Celtics. At the 2, we have JJ Redick, who I have some problems with, Jimmy Butler, an all-star wing, and Tobias Harris, who just had a career year and is pretty much the perfect modern NBA 4, well, at least offensively. And I said I have problems with JJ, so here are those problems. Well, actually I only have one problem, really. It's his shot selection. JJ Redick takes shots that he often has no business taking. The Sixers throw away so many possessions where JJ Redick throws up a contested fadeaway mid-range shot with a defender draped all over him, and they do this with plenty of time on the clock. JJ Redick is one of the greatest spot-up shooters the game has ever seen, but notice that I said spot-up shooter. It's ridiculous how many times JJ takes shots like he's Stephen Curry, not in the pull-up from 35 feet type of way, but in the I'm so damn good it doesn't matter how contested this shot is kind of way. So that's JJ Redick. Next, I want to talk about Tobias Harris. Versus the Raptors, Tobias struggled. He averaged 4 less points per game and shot 36% from the field and 26% from 3, which is bad, but I don't really have any criticism for his play. He wasn't taking bad shots, he just wasn't making his open ones. The Sixers also really don't do a good job of running plays for Tobias, and to discuss that, we'd have to talk about Brett Brown, and that's a rabbit hole that I really don't want to go down right now. So let's move on to Jimmy Butler, who was, to put it simply, phenomenal in this series. He averaged 23, 7, and 6 on 45% shooting, and he stepped up when no one else would, in the moments where the Sixers needed someone to step up. Ironically, after the Tobias Harris trade was made, I was of the opinion that the Sixers should let Jimmy Butler walk. mostly because his lack of fit and cohesion within the Sixers offense. But based off of how he played in this series and how important he was to their success, I was wrong. Now, in terms of how these three fit in together, Jimmy is a necessary piece for big moments, even if his mediocre jump shot and ball dominance can sometimes hurt the Sixers offense. Tobias Harris needs to be a little bit less trash, but the Sixers also need to run plays for him, and JJ Redick needs to stop taking stupid shots just because he's pretty good at making shots in general. So now, how do these three tie in with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid? Well, JJ Redick and Tobias Harris should work out as shooters. They need the spacing from them. But as for Jimmy, I just said that he's a necessity for this team because they need a perimeter player that can create his own shots in big moments. I'm pretty sure Butler's first game as a Sixer, or something close to it, was a game where he hit a game winner versus the Charlotte Hornets.
It is Butler for the win. Yes! Butler buries the three with 0.3 of a second to go.
My memory could be wrong, but I'm also way too lazy to fact check that. But my point remains. To be a successful team, even if you have a great big man like Joel Embiid, you need some sort of player that can create his own shot off of the dribble in the clutch. And that necessity that Butler fills speaks a lot to the weaknesses of Ben Simmons. The fact that Butler is a necessary player for the Sixers shows what type of player Ben Simmons is. Now, a while ago I made a video called The Negative Side of the Three-Point Era, and my main complaint was that too many people act like a player is automatically trash because they cannot shoot. But Ben Simmons' inability to shoot the ball really fucks up the Sixers offense. And it's not just his inability to hit a spot-up jumper, though that definitely matters. What really kills the Sixers offense is Simmons' inability to take a pull-up shot, or a fadeaway, or a three out of the pick and roll. He can obviously dribble and get to the basket pretty effectively, but his inability to do some Kobe shit is why Jimmy Butler has to be a part of this team. If Ben Simmons had some Kobe shit in him when the Sixers need it, Butler wouldn't be necessary, and they could instead get a player that fits better with the whole team, that's cheaper, and you can just let Simmons be the guy that takes and makes those kind of shots. But the fact that that Kobe in the clutch aspect isn't in his game really kills this team a lot. And just talking about his jumper in general, because of his lack of a jump shot, there are so many times when Ben is off ball where he is standing under the basket, which kills the Sixers spacing because Simmons down low means one of two things. Either A, Simmons and Embiid are both inside and they step on each other's toes, mostly Ben getting in the way of Embiid, not the other way around, or B, Joel Embiid ends up being forced to be on the perimeter where he obviously isn't as effective. And as much as I'd love the solution to be, okay, well, just give Ben Simmons the ball all the time, one, that's really not viable, but two, because like I said, Simmons can't create his own shot. So they very often have to give the ball to Jimmy Butler to let him go to work, which puts Simmons in this awful position. That kills the Sixers offense. Next, we have Joel Embiid. Now, I will not criticize Embiid for his actual performance too much because one, he was dealing with injury, and two, he was playing against a former Defensive Player of the Year. However, with how often Joel Embiid is injured, I don't think it's really fair at all to just ignore that aspect of the game. The versatility of Joel Embiid to get injured is through the roof. Think of a part of the human body, any part. He's probably been injured there. Yes, even there, you sick fuck. So if Embiid is going to be injured this often, it needs to be possible to criticize him while injured if he's going to be injured 90% of the time that he's playing. My biggest problem with Joel Embiid's offensive game is the amount of jump shots that he takes. Generally speaking, when former NBA players who are commentating on a game say that a player should stop taking so many jump shots, it annoys me because they're acting like it's still the 1990s. However, Joel Embiid needs to stop taking so many jump shots, especially from three. It feels like he is settling. There are very few players that truly have the size to bother Embiid in the post. He needs to spam the post up and get buckets there and take less jump shots. And defensively, and this applies in general, Embiid needs to get a bit more nimble. That probably means losing some weight, which ironically hurts his post game, but his slow lumbering ass cannot keep up with guards on the perimeter at all, and I think we all know how important that is in the modern NBA. Now, the biggest problem that I have with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid together is that they're together. Their fit is really not good, and call me crazy, but your two best players not fitting together well is really not great. If Ben can improve his jump shot, not to be dramatic, but I'm going to be dramatic, this duo will never work until Ben Simmons can shoot. The spacing and creating issues that come with Ben Simmons, combined with Joel Embiid, really put a cap on how good this team can be. If they were separate from each other, I think they would both be far more successful. Now, can Ben and Embiid improve upon these problems and become much better players? I can't say no, but I also definitely can't say yes. I'm certainly more confident in Embiid's ability to improve, because who Joel was when he was drafted versus who he was when he finally started playing were two very different players. Ben Simmons has been playing basketball for a decade, and yet his jump shot is worse than mine would be at an NBA level. And that's not a brag about my jump shot. I mean, I am an unathletic white guy, and I worked on my jump shot religiously because of that, because what else would I have? So it's not terrible, but that's also not a brag. That's just speaking to how bad of a shooter Ben Simmons is. As for Embiid, I think he can improve his shot selection and also improve his jump shot. I believe he shot like 34% from 3 in his rookie year. His mid-range game is fine, but if he's going to be taking as many threes as he does, he needs to get better at making them. And he needs to be more aggressive attacking the basket in the post, rather than settling for mid-range jump shots. Even though I just said he's good at them, the mid-range shot needs to be an option that keeps the defense honest, not something that he is consistently going to. He shouldn't be taking as many mid-range shots as he does post shots, which is what it really feels like he does. And as for their fit together, it really all comes down to Ben Simmons and his jump shot. That's the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.